Hello, my name is Binh Rey. I'm a trademark attorney at Poynton Partners. I've worked in sales and marketing roles with multinational companies for over 20 years, and in the last 10 years, I have been a trademark specialist. I've been exposed to international trade throughout my career, and I've found that the export of products and services can be complex and daunting for any company that's wanting to go globally. I'm delighted to be hosting a new show to assist Australian company, and we've called it Export 101, and it's meant to be a guide for companies in Australia wanting to go overseas. We will be exploring various matters such as strategy, including marketing, product research and development, sales channels, distribution models, intellectual property, legal, including company structure, tax and contracts, government grants, finance, freight, transport, and human resources, because it's really important that you build a successful team if you're wanting to go overseas. So please join me for future episodes where I will have the experts in each field to help you understand why their topic is important and to get their tips to help your company export globally. Hope you will join me. So for our first episode of Export 101, we have a special guest here. Cynthia Durham, thank you very much for flying from Sydney this morning to be with us.
Thanks for having me on the show, Binh.
So Cynthia is a podcaster, an international trade specialist, and she helps companies through her company, Durham Associates, to help Australian companies to go global. And we are very, very happy that she's joining us for the first episode, just to talk through some of the matters and topics that Australian businesses need to consider before embarking overseas. So Cynthia, please tell us about your story, how you began in international trade.
Hey, great question. So look, I started life as a lawyer, kind of like you, and I joined the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade as a grad back in 2001. For my sins, I got trained in Arabic and sent off to the Middle East. And I did that for about 5 years before I switched over and became a management consultant and spent a bunch of time consulting around the Middle East region. Came back to Australia after about 12 years abroad, ran a Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and then started Deeren and Associates. So that's the very, very short version. I think the thing that I kept seeing through that time overseas was that there were all these amazing opportunities for companies to go global, but there were some really big gaps in people's knowledge when it came to how to do it. So most companies really didn't have a very clear idea of the steps that they needed to follow to go from this idea of, hey, I want to go global, to actually realizing that. And that is what I set out to do by setting up the company.
Excellent. You're certainly correct. I, as a trademark attorney, I work with a lot of customers that have ambitions to make their business successful in Australia, but also they've got ambitions to go overseas, partly because Australia's population is very small compared to, let's say, America or the UK. However, they have no idea what are the steps, and I only advise them on intellectual property, but I know that there are many more steps, and that's why Export 101 has been, the show is proceeding in terms of trying to give the Australian customers, companies, an idea of what are the steps it's required to go overseas successfully and not just waste their money and potentially their dreams.
Absolutely.
Correctly.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. So one of the, I guess, a lot of companies in Australia would say, what are the most critical steps that they need to consider before even thinking about going overseas with their products or services?
So look, if you're asking me, I would say the first thing that you need to do is to work out why you're doing it. You know, I mean, that sounds very basic, and people often say, oh, well, I want to generate more sales.
Yes.
Which is fine as far as it goes, but that is not enough of a defined reason. So you really need to look at your plan for going global and work out, why are we doing this? Is it just for more revenue? Are we looking for higher margins? Are we trying to control costs by creating economies of scale or setting up in a jurisdiction where there are really favorable tax and setup conditions? You know, what is it exactly that we're trying to achieve for the company? And then once you've done that, really set out a vision that you want to, I like to say a 10-year vision, but a lot of people find that kind of intimidating because 10 years seems a long time away. So look, at a minimum, you know, to work out in the next 5 years, where do you want to be, and really put some markers down and decide what it is that you want to be doing and where you want to have arrived at, what success looks like. So really defining success for a period, and then working backwards to work out what needs to happen to make that real. And that's really your starting point, because if you don't do that, time goes by, and you might get to the end of 3 or 5 or 10 years. How will you know if you've succeeded? So I think that's very, very important that we set up those success metrics at the start. And then once you've done that, for me, the next important question is, well, which market are we going to go to? And I think this is a place and a question that really causes a lot of problems for people, either because they can't decide and they kind of go round and round in circles and get stuck and end up not doing it because they just can't, they don't know how to make a decision, they don't have any tools for doing that. Or they just do this kind of stab in the dark thing, you know, where they stick a pin in a map or a globe and they say, oh, that looks good. Or we went on holiday there and it was so much fun and we think we'll sell that. I do.
Because we want to live there and have this business.
No kidding. I know somebody who is a friend of a colleague of mine who went on a holiday to Bali and couldn't buy a packet of Smith's salt and vinegar crisps. And so he decided to become the distributor for Smith's in Bali, and that was how he made the business decision. I don't think it necessarily turned out particularly well, but a lot of people, you know, a lot of people do it that way. So I think deciding where you're going to go using a data-based approach is super important. And then once you've done that, figuring out who your ideal international client is. Because unless you know who you really want to reach in that overseas market, it doesn't matter how much marketing you throw at the wall, it's not going to stick. You know, if you don't have messages that are actually speaking to the people that you want to reach, you will invest a ginormous amount of money in marketing and you won't get much return, you won't make sales, and you run the high risk that the whole thing just folds up underneath you and, you know, you come out feeling burnt and you don't try again. So those are, I mean, there is a huge shopping list of things we could mention that people need to do, but those are 3 of the first ones that I think are really important.
Well, I was listening to your podcast on the weekend and one of the episodes mentioned that even the large companies with lots of money get it wrong. For example, was it Bunnings that went to the UK and thought that they could just do a cut and paste of their business plan in Australia, made a lot of assumptions that because they were successful here, that they could just transplant their business plan in Australia to the UK, but I'll let you continue the story, that how it ended for them.
Well, they did. I mean, they paid a huge amount of money. I can't remember the exact.
300 million?
It was like,
I don't know.
Nearly, like, I don't know, nearly $1 billion. I think they paid to acquire a chain of stores that was not doing so well, and they thought we'll turn them all into Bunnings. And Bunnings is so successful, and you know, Australia's kind of like Britain, and everybody will love it. And they just kind of forgot that in the UK, most people don't live on a 1/4 acre block with a ginormous back garden, and that it's, well, not this year, but mainly it's sunny a lot and you can be outside, you know, having a garden and painting things. In the UK, a lot of people are living in tiny, tiny houses with a pocket handkerchief back garden. It's raining for 9 months of the year.
Who wants to be outside?
Nobody wants to be outside. Paint doesn't work the same well. And so they just found that pretty much the only thing that worked was the sausage sizzle. And that went really, really well. And everything else just kind of tanked. It just didn't, the product mix that they had and the size of stores and things just really didn't gel with the British audience.
Well, you're saying that if the houses are smaller, well, they're going to have less quantities of everything. Less paint, less nails.
Like you can't sell huge barbecues if there's nowhere to put the huge barbecue and it's freezing cold. So it just didn't really work. I mean, Starbucks is another one that did it in a slightly different sector. You know, it's kind of a cross between FMCG and hospitality because, you know, it's a coffee chain. And they had expanded successfully all around the world and they tried to come to Australia. And I'm saying this to you from the coffee capital of Australia. And you probably know they shut something like, I don't know, 80% of the stores they had here and had to relaunch again, and they burned, I think, through around $100 million because they took an American coffee culture concept that had worked elsewhere and they tried to plop it down here without really figuring out what was specific to the market here and what the clients and the customers in Australia wanted. And it didn't work. You know, people didn't like it. It really didn't gel with their expectations of, you know, traditional European cafe culture, and so the thing didn't work out. So you're absolutely right. You know, the big mistakes are not limited to the small companies.
That's right. I was also at a founders webinar maybe a month ago, and I was listening to the CEO of Mr. Yum, Kim, and she's currently in Las Vegas at a hospitality trade show. And because they've just, I think, obtained about 165 million seed money from investors, and so they've been really successful with a menu ordering app here. Going overseas, they decided US, UK as the two major markets to launch into after Australia. And they're finding that, she was saying that the two markets are very different culturally, and that if they had known beforehand, potentially they would have tackled UK first, because the culture of ordering hospitality are similar to Australia. But in the US, it's more complicated because there's tipping involved.
Yeah.
So there's a big tipping culture in the US in hospitality, where in the Australia and UK there
Much
isn't.
less, yeah.
And so the app works or it's easily adapted in the UK. So those are sort of more stories about how bigger companies can get it wrong. So it's really important for smaller businesses to consider all these factors.
Especially because a smaller company's got many fewer resources than a large company. So a
Yes.
large company can probably get away with a few mistakes.
Yes.
But for a small company, if you've got your $50,000 or $100,000 budget to try an international expansion and you get it wrong by making a mistake, expanding to multiple markets
Yes.
simultaneously is a classic one.
Yes.
Because it stretches your resources so far, because it's basically like starting the company again
Yes.
every time you take it to a new market, and it's just a huge amount of time, money, energy required.
Yes.
If you make that mistake and it blows up in your face, sometimes that can finish you off. You don't have the resources to try again,
Yes.
and you probably feel like you don't want to try again because it's a very painful experience.
Yeah.
And it's probably wrecked your reputation a little bit as well because you had a go and failed it.
Well, in what I do, which is trademarks, it's exactly the same. If they go to too many countries, the bill for each trademark in each country can add up quite a bit before you even start. So it is probably advisable to maybe do a step back. I always say to clients, step back, look at which market you want to go to before you actually even launch it, and really research your marketplace. So, yeah. Well, in the last 3 years, COVID-19 has hit the world globally. So how have you found with your clients, how has it affected exporting, the exporting environment? We hear things like freight cost, the exchange rates, the border closures. So how has international trade been affected by COVID?
So I think, short-term impact was obviously pretty severe because movement of goods slowed right down, and it's still, global supply chains are still choked, and that sent costs through the roof, and movement of people pretty much ground to a complete halt.
Yes.
So the short-term impact let's take the goods side first, that was pretty severe. I think, and obviously there's been a real move to onshore manufacturing around the world.
Yes.
My sense though is that over time, you will see trading goods go back up to the historic highs that it was at before. And that is simply because it's very difficult for any one country to manufacture absolutely every single thing that, that the people in that country want. There might be a couple of exceptions to that, but if you look back through history, people have always wanted things that came from elsewhere. Especially as you look at premium and luxury products, there's always a taste for the exotic. And the exotic and the luxury is often something that comes from elsewhere. So I think, you'll see that kind of unwind to a degree, evolve, take a different form. But I think you will see over time trading goods go back up. Especially from an Australian point of view, because there's this rash of free trade agreements that are getting signed at the moment, and that's obviously all geared.
I think this year alone, the UK, India recently, so that's going to open up a huge market for Australia.
Yeah, and then if you look at the trade and services side, I think the pandemic's actually done some amazingly good stuff. Well, good and bad. Okay, there's a bright side to this and there's a dark side. The bright side is if you sell services, there's much less resistance to
Yes.
receiving those services virtually.
Because people are more used to Zoom
Yeah,
and
so-
being able
yeah.
to deal with people online.
I mean, think about it. Telemedicine, you know,
Yes.
so many people are now opting to go and have a medical consultation
Yes, online.
for a lot of things via a screen because they don't
Yes.
want to go to a germy old
Yes.
doctor's surgery. And that goes across all fields. So I think there are
Mm.
lots of opportunities to deliver services. If you can package up something and you can use geo arbitrage in your favor and you can have a well-designed, usable service product that you can deliver virtually across borders. For example, you could do something in the design field in Australia and put it into the United States or Europe, and you can charge it at an Australian premium, and it's still cheap for the people in
Yes.
those markets, and the service quality is, you know, more or less on a par. Then that can be a really great thing.
Yes.
The dark side of it, though, is that people around the world have that opportunity.
Yes.
And there
you've
are
got
lots of smart
big-
professional
yes.
people in locations that cost a lot less
Yes.
than
yes,
the one that
that's
we're
right.
in. And
Yes.
so, you know, there's fierce competition all around the world to use resources from offshore. I mean, I could point to dozens of companies that have got all their back office services done by people in India and the Philippines. And those people enjoy a really comfortable standard of life, but they cost a fraction of what, you know, an employee
Yes.
in Europe or the States or Australia or New Zealand would cost. And so there is this tension. So I think there, on the services side in particular, there is simultaneously huge opportunity and really real risk. I mean, that is one reason that I think companies in the services space should be looking at whether now is a good time for them to go global.
Yes.
Because even if they feel as though they're safe and protected, there are people sitting offshore waiting to come into this market.
Yeah.
And there are also competitors who are local competitors who are using the resources from offshore to produce the same or better quality products at a fraction of the price. So, yeah.
That's right. I just want to go back to the point where you said that we can't manufacture everything here. It is so true. Even if you're producing a widget here, if you're missing one component that's come from China or the States, and this widget has, I don't know, 100 parts to it, if you're just missing one widget, is that factory actually going to produce that one widget just to complete that widget? So,
and that's the problem.
That's a problem.
So, yeah,
yes.
global supply chains are so intertwined
Yes.
that even if we're onshore a whole lot of stuff, and I'm not against that, I think, you
Yes.
know, the way that technology is going, there are cases in which you can now manufacture onshore for less than you can manufacture offshore, and it can be delivered in a timely manner, which is obviously key. But it's just when you look at the array of everything that's made, I just struggle to see how you could expect one country to manufacture everything. I think it doesn't seem that likely.
Yes, that's right. So, and I guess the last question I have is now the right time to expand globally? Is this the right time?
I believe so, but my caveat would be it depends. So, you know, it depends what business you run, it depends what kind of shape it's in right now. So I wouldn't say, you know, blanket rule for everybody in the world now is the absolute best time, but I would say, look, generally speaking, it is a pretty fantastic time because we have never had more access to, you know, ideas, access to clients, even the ability to generate really high quality marketing virtually for free. I mean, anybody can do those things. So in that sense, yeah, you know, you can set up a business and expand it around the world and sell around the world more easily than you can at any other time in history. I mean, again, it depends what you sell. If you think about sparkly earrings or bikinis or soy candles, you could start a business on your kitchen table this weekend.
That's right.
And if you've got a Shopify account or an Amazon account, and you wanted to start sending things to other parts of the world, there's absolutely nothing to stop you. So in that sense, yeah, I think now's a great time.
Excellent. Well, I might go back and, you know, speak to my husband. We might do a small business on the side. Why not?
Why not?
You've just inspired me to. So thank you very much, Cynthia, for being with us today. And I just want to congratulate you on your new book,
Thank you.
Businesses Beyond Borders. And I look forward to going to your postponed launch in Melbourne in the next week or so. Again, COVID had actually derailed that a little bit last week. So thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for being part of the first episode.
It's my pleasure.